Hello students, in today's video we will discuss gonadotropins. Gonadotropins include two hormones, namely follicle stimulating hormone, in short FSH, and luteinizing hormone, in short LH. Now both these hormones are released by anterior pituitary. Now FSH and LH are termed as gonadotropins as these hormones regulate the functioning of gonads, namely testes in male and ovaries in females. Now in this video we are going to study functions of gonadotropins, factors that regulate secretion of these gonadotropins in males as well as in females. We will also discuss pharmacology of synthetic preparations of FSH and LH. Now let's first talk about the structure of FSH and LH. Now gonadotropins are glycoprotein hormones. Now here glyco refers to glucose or sugar and protein refers to peptide chains made up of amino acids. So FSH and LH are made up of 23 to 28% sugar and two peptide chains, namely alpha chain and beta chain. Now look at this figure. Now these are the two peptide chains of LH and these are the two peptide chains of FSH. Now their alpha chain is common. It's the same in LH as well as in FSH. While their beta chain is distinct, that is, it is different in LH and FSH. Now let's discuss the physiological functions of FSH and LH. Now FSH and LH act in harmony with each other. These two hormones together control the functioning of gonads, that is testes and ovaries. Now let's first study the functions of follicle stimulating hormone in females. Now as we all know, ovaries are made up of ovarian follicles. Each ovarian follicle consists of immature egg. So as the name suggests, follicle stimulating hormone stimulate the growth of ovarian follicles. So FSH induces maturation of ovarian follicle and the development of ovum or egg in the ovarian follicle. Now as we know that ovaries produce the female reproductive hormone estrogen. Actually it's the FSH that induces secretion of estrogen by the developing follicles in the ovary. So remember that in females, FSH causes growth and maturation of egg and release of estrogen from the ovaries. Similarly in males, FSH supports the process of spermatogenesis and stimulate the production of sperms. Now let's study functions of LH. First, functions of LH in females. Now LH surge or rise in the levels of LH causes rupture or breaks the developed ovarian follicle. Now when the developed ovarian follicle breaks, it releases the ovum or egg and the process is called as ovulation. So LH surge triggers the process of ovulation. Now ruptured follicle is called as corpus luteum. Now LH stimulates corpus luteum to release female reproductive hormone, that is progesterone. So LH induces ovulation and stimulate ovaries to produce progesterone. Similarly in males, LH induces release of male reproductive hormone, that is testosterone, from the interstitial cells of the testes. Now let's study regulation of secretion of FSH and LH by anterior pituitary. Let's first study regulation of these hormones in females. Now look at this figure. Now this is the zoomed view of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is located towards the base of the brain. Now these are the two lobes of pituitary gland. This is anterior pituitary and this is posterior pituitary. Pituitary gland is located just below the hypothalamus. Now gonadotrophs are the cells that release FSH and LH. These gonadotrophs are located in the anterior pituitary. Now gonadotropin releasing hormone, that is GnRH, is secreted by the hypothalamus. Now this GnRH binds to GnRH receptors on gonadotrophs. This causes stimulation of gonadotrophs, and this further releases follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary. So look at this figure. Now hypothalamus releases GnRH, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone. Now very important to remember here that GnRH is not released continuously in females. GnRH is released in a pulsatile fashion. Frequency and amplitude of each pulse determine release of FSH or LH or both, and the amount in which these hormones are released. Now look at this figure. Now as we know, average menstrual cycle is of 28 days, where a follicle develops, releases egg, and the ruptured follicle transforms itself into corpus luteum. Now day 1 to day 14, this phase is termed as the follicular phase, whereas day 15th to day 28th is termed as the luteal phase. Now the hormone FSH shown here in the red color. So the hormone FSH is predominantly produced during the follicular phase where the follicles develop. Now very important, these developing follicles produce estrogen. Now LH, as shown here in the green color, LH is predominantly produced during the luteal phase. Now this mid-cycle surge of LH causes rupture of follicle and release of egg. Now ruptured follicle transforms into corpus luteum, and it is the corpus luteum that produces progesterone. So GnRH is released by the hypothalamus. GnRH further stimulates anterior pituitary to produce FSH and LH. Now FSH is produced predominantly during the follicular phase, as we have seen here. FSH is predominantly produced during the follicular phase. Now LH is predominantly produced during the luteal phase. So as shown here in the green color, LH is predominantly produced during the luteal phase. Now as already discussed, FSH stimulates development of ovarian follicle, and developing follicles release estrogen. Now very important, moderate levels of estrogen in blood send negative feedback signal to anterior pituitary, and this inhibits release of FSH by the anterior pituitary. On the other hand, high levels of estrogen send positive feedback signals to anterior pituitary. This stimulates increased release of follicle stimulating hormone as well as increased secretion of luteinizing hormone responsible for the process of ovulation. So look here, this mid-cycle surge of FSH and LH is due to high levels of estrogen in the blood. Now this estrogen is produced by the developing ovarian follicles. Now LH is produced in larger amounts during luteal phase. Now LH surge causes a rupture of ovarian follicle and release of ovum. The process is called as ovulation. The ruptured follicle becomes corpus luteum, and corpus luteum produces progesterone under the influence of luteinizing hormone. Now if the egg which is released during ovulation is not fertilized, then in that case increased progesterone sends negative feedback signal to the anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary inhibits secretion of LH. So levels of estrogen in the blood regulate secretion of FSH, while levels of progesterone in the blood regulates release of LH from the anterior pituitary. So this is a beautiful chart that explains regulation of secretion of LH and FSH in females from anterior pituitary. Now let's study regulation of secretion of LH and FSH in males. Now, as we have already learned by now, hypothalamus releases gonadotropin releasing hormone, that is GnRH, which stimulates anterior pituitary to release gonadotropins, namely luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Now, in men, levels of FSH and LH remain practically constant. Now, luteinizing hormone in males stimulate interstitial cells of the testes to produce testosterone. Now, increased testosterone in the blood sends negative feedback signals to anterior pituitary, which then inhibits release of LH. On the other hand, FSH in males stimulates seminiferous tubules in the testis to produce sperms. Now, at the same time, seminiferous tubules also produce a protein that is called as inhibin. Inhibin is released in a proportion to the sperm count. Increased synthesis of sperms increases release of inhibin, while reduced synthesis of sperms inhibit the release of inhibin. So, if the sperm count is increased, secretion of inhibin is also increased. And this increased inhibin sends negative feedback signals to anterior pituitary, which inhibits release of FSH, thereby reducing the release of sperms. So, this is how LH controls the secretion of testosterone, while FSH regulates the production of sperms in the males. Now, in addition to LH and FSH, let's also talk and understand the function of another very important hormone, that is the human chorionic gonadotropin, in short HCG. Now, human chorionic gonadotropin is a hormone which is similar to that of luteinizing hormone. Human chorionic gonadotropin also stimulates the release of progesterone from corpus luteum. Now, as we all know, ovulation causes release of ovum or the mature egg. Now, if the ovum or egg is fertilized, it forms a zygote, and we say that the pregnancy has occurred. Now, this zygote, it gets embedded in the uterine wall, and it is this zygote that releases human chorionic gonadotropin. Now, as we all know, after the egg is released, the ruptured ovarian follicle is termed as corpus luteum. Now, human chorionic gonadotropin protects this corpus luteum. It keeps this corpus luteum intact. Now, it is this corpus luteum that secretes progesterone for the first 3 to 4 months of pregnancy. And later the function of producing progesterone is taken over by the placenta. And this progesterone is very important for maintaining the pregnancy. So, human chorionic gonadotropin is a hormone that is released during the initial phase of pregnancy, and it maintains the release of progesterone from the corpus luteum. Now, by now we know that FSH and LH are required for ovulation, spermatogenesis, secretion of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone. Now, let's understand pathological involvements of gonadotropin secretion. Now, deficiency of gonadotropins, that is reduced synthesis and release of FSH and LH, causes delayed puberty in girls and boys. Now, in addition to this, it causes amenorrhea, that is absence of monthly menstrual periods, and sterility, that is inability to produce children in women. While in men, reduced FSH and LH causes oligospermia, that is low sperm count, impotence and infertility. On the other hand, excessive secretion of gonadotropins, that is FSH and LH, can cause precocious puberty, that is puberty that happens early. This can occur in girls as well as in boys. In women, excessive FSH and LH can cause polycystic ovaries. Now let's talk about the gonadotropic secretions. Now synthetic gonadotropic preparations are the preparations of FSH and LH which are used for the conditions like induction of ovulation, treatment of hypogonadism in males. Now let's see to the certain features of these gonadotropic preparations. Now earlier preparations which were extracted from urine, they are administered by the intramuscular route, while newer purified preparations made from the recombinant technology are administered by the subcutaneous route. Now these gonadotropic preparations are excreted unchanged in the urine and they have a longer half-life of 2 to 6 hours. Now the first recombinant preparation is of FSH, polytropin alpha and polytropin beta. Lutropin is a recombinant LH preparation. Another preparation is the recombinant human chorionic gonadotropin. It is suitable for the subcutaneous administration and thus it can be self-administered. So these are the gonadotropin urinary and recombinant preparations. Now let's discuss uses of gonadotropin preparations. Now urinary and recombinant gonadotropins are useful in the induction of ovulation. They are useful in ovulation induction. Now look at this figure. Now as we all know that mid-cycle surge of LH and rise in FSH is responsible for ovulation. So if there is deficient production of gonadotropins, that is if there is deficient production of LH and FSH by anterior pituitary, it can cause amenorrhea, that is absence of menstruation, therefore no ovulation and infertility. So administration of gonadotropin preparations is useful in increasing FSH and LH and therefore highly recommended during ovulation induction. Now in addition to this, non-ovulation or absence of ovulation can also occur in women with polycystic ovaries. Now here the first treatment should be done with the clomiphene. Clomiphene, that is selective estrogen receptor modulator. This is used for the induction of ovulation. Now if therapy with clomiphene fails, then gonadotropin preparations are used to induce ovulation. Now gonadotropin preparations are also used in the treatment of hypogonadotropic hypogonadism in males. Now hypogonadism, that is a reduced functioning of testes and thus reduced production of sperms, reduced production of testosterone and infertility can occur in males due to reduced secretion of LH and FSH. So oligozoospermia, that is reduced sperm count, and male infertility can be treated with gonadotropin preparations, as LH is essential for the synthesis and release of testosterone while FSH is essential for the process of spermatogenesis. Now next is the use of gonadotropic preparations in cryptorchidism. Now cryptorchidism is a condition where the testes do not move into the scrotum. So undescended testes can cause infertility and can also predispose the patient to testicular cancer. So administration of human chorionic gonadotropin preparation causes the descent of testes and thus the testes moves into the scrotum. Now in addition to this, administration of gonadotropin preparations aid or assist in the process of in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization involves fertilization of ovum or fertilization of egg by a sperm in a culture medium in a laboratory. So for this process, large number of eggs are harvested from the woman's body. Now gonadotropic preparation FSH induces simultaneous maturation of several eggs required for the in vitro fertilization process. So these are the uses of gonadotropin preparations. Now let's talk about the adverse effects. Adverse effects include ovarian hyperstimulation. Multiple pregnancies can occur because of the maturation of many eggs at a time, then miscarriage, allergic reactions. Other side effects are edema, headache, mood changes. So this is in brief on gonadotropins, their functions, regulation of their secretion and their preparations. Now please note that the information provided in this video is meant only for the students, and for the clinical use of gonadotropin preparations, please consult your physician. If you find the video useful, kindly like, subscribe and share this video. Thanks for watching this video.